Go to Economics chapter 39, Macroeconomic Supply-Side Policies. When we talk about supply-side policies, we're talking about policies that would increase the long-run aggregate supply. That's what supply-side policies. So we start with supply-side economics itself. For supply-side economics, this is the study of how changes in the long-run aggregate supply curve will change or will affect variables like GDP. So there will be changes in the LRAS, and as soon as these changes come up, it is meant to affect variables like the gross domestic product. Because whatever we produce in an economy, it is still part of our GDP. So whatever we talk about when it comes to supply side, it must have impact on the growth, on the output of that economy. So that takes us to supply side improvements. So improvement simply means we're getting better. That's the performance of the economy becomes better than what it used to be. That is what improvement is. And when we talk about supply side improvement, we can have it based on the fact that firms are trying to invest in maybe capital goods or technology. Investment in capital goods and technology would increase the long run aggregate supply curve. We shift it to the right. That is an improvement. Aside that, training and education of the workforce will also increase productivity. And if productivity is increasing, it is expected that the long run aggregate supply curve should shift rightward. This is what supply side improvement is about. So we have supply side improvement when firms are able to invest in advanced technology or capital goods. It will increase output, and if output increases, the LRAS curve will shift rightward. Another way is through education and training. Education and training improve the skills of the workforce, improve the skills of the workers. And if worker skills are improved, it will have a positive impact on the long run aggregate supply curve. So improvement will come if our long run aggregate supply curve is able to shift from LRAS1 to LRAS2. Do you understand supply side economics? It studies how changes in LRAS affect variables like GDP. That is supply side economics. And when we talk about supply side improvement, it simply talks about what ways in which the long run aggregate supply curve will shift from LRAS1 to LRAS2. And the two ways are one, firms' investments in technology and capital goods. And the other one is through training and education. So workforce training and education improves human capital. And if human capital increases, it affects or it has a positive impact on the supply side of the economy. Any question about that?
No, sir.
Good. So that takes us to, so this is the improvement. So output is expected to rise. Output is expected to rise from LRAS1 to LRAS2. Long run aggregate supply. So these are improvements between the long run aggregate supply curve. And this for the classical and the Keynesian. It's still going to be the same thing. It's shifting from LRAS1 to LRAS2. So these are supply side improvements. Any question about supply side improvement?
No, sir.
Good. So you can have that. Good. Yeah. So then I said supply side okay. Supply side improvement mostly come from the private sector and are independent of government. However, government can further increase output through supply side policies. There's supply side improvement, which comes through the private sector, like I told you, investment in technology or training and education. This is private sector. But if government, so mostly, if government needs to encourage supply side or increase output within the economy, government has to come up with a policy. So these are what we call supply side policies. So we have the policies like interventionist policies or the market-based policies. These are what government will come up with to encourage increasing outputs to the long run aggregate supply curve. But mostly when we talk about supply side policy, it simply comes from the private sector of the economy. But if government is going to intervene, it has to come with a policy. I think the point is clear there. So supply side policies are government policies designed to increase the rate of economic growth, which in turn will increase the macroeconomic performance of the economy. So supply side improvement comes through the free market. And when it comes to supply side policies, they are instruments that are designed to increase the economic growth or to increase the economic performance of a country. Whatever the case may be, in as much as it's supply side, it increases output and productivity. I think the point is clear. So we have two types of supply side policies here. We have the market-based and the interventionist. Are you with me, please?
Yes.
Okay. So we have the market-based and interventionist. So we're going to start with the market-based. So I go supply side policies can be split into two: the free market policies and interventionist policies. For the free market policies, we are talking about policies designed to reduce whatever barriers that hinders the growth of the free market. That is free market policies. Then when it comes to interventionist policies, we're talking about where government has found out or figured out that there is a market failure. Then they are coming up with policies to eradicate or to eliminate those market failure. So those are the two supply side policies. Any question about that? Okay. So we're going to start with the free market policies. So here I wrote. So we're starting with the free market policies. So for free market policies, we said we have two supply side policies. We have the free market policies and the interventionist policies. We call it free market policies because these policies are designed to remove whatever barriers that bring about inefficiency in the free market or in the market itself. And for interventionists, they are government intervention, government coming up with policies based on the fact that they've noticed or figured out that there's a market failure. So let's start with free market policies. The first one. Okay, I got. These are policies designed to remove barriers to the efficient working of free markets. In essence, they are government approaches that help the free market to be more efficient. So we call them free market policies because these policies would enable the free market to be more effective and efficient. So one, we have promoting competition. When we talk about competition, competition is the rivalry that exists between firms that are trying to sell to the same customers in the same market. That is what competition is. So competition will incentivize firms to use resources efficiently, as firms that don't operate in an efficient way are likely to lose out in the free market. In the market, government will try to increase competition as it will reduce customers' exploitation and improve the quality of goods and services sold in the market. Promoting competition. Government will ensure that the market is highly competitive because without competitiveness, customers will be exploited and firms will not have that incentive to be efficient. Efficiency comes when you understand that if you cannot sell at a reduced price or if you cannot provide or produce a quality product, you will lose out. That is when efficiency comes in. That is why they said firms will be incentivized if there is more competition in the market. With more competition, you know that, oh, we have more competitors. If we are not doing well, we will lose out. Our competitors will take our customers. There's no customer in heaven, all the customers are here. So with promoting competition, government has ensured that the market is open for all. So because the market is open for all, the only thing you could do is to find a way to be more efficient. So because if you are more efficient, it allows you to sell at a reduced price and to sell a quality product. That's what efficiency will bring about here. So it's all about the quality in the market because the only way you can stay relevant in the market is when you provide or produce quality products at affordable prices for customers. Do you get it? So what are the ways in which government can increase competition? The first one, the regulation of product markets. When we talk about product market, we're talking about the market where goods and services are sold. So here I wrote, the regulation is the process of removing government controls from markets with the approach. With that approach, firms will be encouraged to produce goods and services which will in turn increase output and lower prices. So when the regulation comes in, it simply means government reduces or softens or remove rules and regulations that hinder the efficiency of the free market. So in the course of removing that, it means their cost of production would reduce. And that might allow them to increase their output because the supply curve is going to shift rightward. The longer the supply curve is going to shift rightward, and that would encourage them to sell at a reduced price. So the first way to increase or to encourage competition is by removing barriers, removing rules, regulations that affect firms. So if regulations are removed, if there's deregulation, it encourages more firms to want to set up in that market. And if more firms are setting up in that market, output is expected to rise. And with most firms setting up, it means prices have to fall because there's more competitors. So you wouldn't have any other choice than to sell as maybe the same price as your competitors. Do you understand the first way now? The second process is through privatization. And when we talk about privatization, we're talking about the transfer of public or government assets to the hands of the private sector. And that can also increase the long-run aggregate supply curve. So yeah, I got the sale of government organizations or assets to the private sector. That is what privatization is. So the sales of government assets to the private sector may solve government failure, which results from inefficiency in the public sector. Most of the time, the public sector is always considered inefficient. And why? It's because they are not profit oriented. So they don't care about profit. They don't have the mindset of maximizing profit. They just want to render service to the society. So as a result of that, there's no incentive to be more efficient. And that is a problem because it's a government failure. Without efficiency, then we're not going forward. So this inefficiency can be solved through privatization. That's another way which the free market could have more power, could increase its output. So most of the time, the public sector doesn't have profit motive. As a result, doesn't think about efficiency, like I said earlier. Unlike the private sector, which is incentivized by the profit motive, there's the private sector. Whatever they engage in, they are engaging in it because it is expected of them to make profit. So that makes them to be more efficient, unlike the public sector. That's the difference here. So if there's a government failure, one way to resolve or to solve that government failure is through privatization. Do you understand the second point here?
Yes.
However, critics would argue that the private sector firms put profit before providing a good or service, as they may reduce output to raise prices in order to make more profit. This means supply. Okay. Okay. Hold on, please. So the criticism about the private sector is that most of the time, the private sector, they put profit ahead. So that's why there's rationalization. They want to rationalize, they want to sell to those who can afford them. So for them to do that, because they have more power, because there's deregulation, it allows them to decide whatever they want to do with output in order to make profit. So one of the things they could do is they reduce output. And as soon as output reduces, what happens on the market? Scarcity comes in. Yes or no?
Yes.
And if scarcity comes in, firms will not have any other choice, or consumers will not have any other choice.
Find substitutes.
There won't be substitutes. When scarcity comes in, goods are not available, supply exceeds demand. You don't get it. This is how it works.
When there's scarce, how does supply exceed demand?
Oh, sorry, demand exceeds supply. That's what I want to say. Sorry. So what I'm saying is deregulation or privatization is ideal. It increases the long-run aggregate supply curve. But there's criticism about supply-side policy. The criticism about supply-side policy in the free market policy, which is privatization. The criticism is that the free market or the private sector prioritize profits ahead of output. And so for them to make more profit, they might decide to reduce their output. Reducing their output means there's scarcity. Demand exceeds supply. And if demand exceeds supply, what happens? Price raises. That raises the price of goods and services. So that's the criticism about the private sector when it comes to privatization. But the public sector will not do that because the public sector they provide services, not to make profit. Therefore, privatization will be more effective as a supply-side policy if there is a well-developed competition policy in an economy. So we have to, for supply-side policy to be effective, that means government has to come up with competition policy. Without competition policy, supply-side policy privatization will not be effective. Why? With privatization, it means the production of goods and services lies in the hands of the private sector. But if the private sector decides whatever happens, few of them will decide. There might be monopoly. Do you understand? And if there's monopoly, then it will not be effective. So the only way to make it effective is to ensure that there is a competition policy that will break the monopoly. If government is providing, like the General Electric Company of Libya, it's the only provider of electricity in Libya, right? So if it is privatized, it means the private sector that bought the General Electric Company of Libya has power to increase output or reduce output, to raise prices or reduce prices. Yes or no?
Yes.
So that will bring about monopoly. It's a pure monopoly. Yes or no?
Why?
It's a monopoly because it's still the only supplier. Right now, it's a legal one. It's a legal monopoly because General Electric Company of Libya is the only provider of electricity. So if GECOL is privatized without competition policy, it will still exploit customers. because it's a private sector. Now they will think about making more profit from customers. They are the only one providing it. So what option do you have? So that's why they said, therefore, privatization will be more effective as a supply side policy if there's a well-developed competition policy. With competition policy, which means whatever the case might be, they will break the barriers that allow you to be the only one selling in that market. So that means as soon as the General Electric Company of Libya is privatized, the government will allow new firms to come into the electrical company, to the
Sector.
sector, to the power sector, so that they can also sell or supply to customers. And when more choices are available for customers, prices are expected to fall.
Mhm.
I think privatization is clear there.
Yes, sir.
Any question about it? Good. So we'll move on. So when we talk about competition policy, I wrote, it is designed to increase competition in markets, reducing the power of monopolies. I said that earlier. And making cartel and price fixing agreements illegal. By reducing prices and increasing output, competition policy should raise output in the economy and so increase aggregate supply. So with competition policy, it makes privatization become effective. With that, output is expected to rise, prices are expected to fall, and the supply side will have improvement because aggregate supply is expected to rise. Any question about competition policy?
Yeah.
Great. That's the first way. That's the free market. Now we go to the second way in which the second way in which the free market policy can be used or initiated or yes, used anyway. Let's use that. So that's through reduction in taxation. Are you there?
Mm.
A reduction in taxation, I wrote. Taxation is the means by which a government imposes tax on its citizens and business entities. We call it taxation because that is the way or the process through which government imposes tax on individuals and firms. A tax itself is a levy imposed on an individual or company by the government. So there's taxation, which is the way in which government imposes taxes. And there's a tax itself, which is a levy imposed by government on individuals and firms. I think the point is clear. So now we go to taxes on income. For taxes on income, I wrote, high taxes on income will discourage individuals from working, as this could mean taking a job, working extra hours, or working hard at a job. Higher taxes for employers will discourage them from employing workers. The most important variable is not the average tax rate, rather the marginal tax rate. Workers will be willing to take more jobs or work extra hours if the marginal tax rate is lower, as this means they will be able to earn more working extra hours. So this may increase the supply side of labor. However, cutting marginal tax rates possesses some setbacks, such as, before we go into that. So the point about taxation is this. Taxes are expected to reduces the income of individuals. Taxes reduces the profit of firms. So now let's base on income. The average tax is not the problem because if tax increases, individuals know that they can work extra hour to cover up for that increase. Yes or no?
Sure.
So the most important thing is not to reduce the marginal tax rate, because if you increase the marginal tax rate, it affects the extra hours worked, because it means they pay more working extra hour, and that will become a disincentive to work. That reduces the supply of labor. Get the point here? The average tax rate is never going to be a problem because tax is inevitable. So we have to pay taxes. But the point is increasing the marginal tax rate. That is where we're going.
But some people don't pay taxes, Mr.
They evade tax.
Yes.
But it is illegal to evade tax,
I know.
So
Some people lose it.
if you evade tax, you're caught. It's illegal. It's against the state. So you are not expected to evade it.
Yeah.
Get my point here? So, well, the point here is that there's tax, which is inevitable, right? Government wants to encourage the free market. And for government to encourage the free market, government might reduce taxation. We know what taxation is already.
Yes, sir.
Ways in which taxes are being charged. It's okay. Ways in which taxes are being charged. So, Citizens will be encouraged to work harder if average tax increases,
Okay.
but not marginal tax rate. Because working harder, doing extra work, means that you are expecting a marginal income. Your income is expected to rise based on the fact that you are putting more, you are doing extra. So if marginal tax rate increases, that discourages people to work. It's not the average tax, because the average tax is inevitable. We have to pay taxes. But as soon as I know that I'm paying taxes and I want my income to increase, what I have to do is what? To do extra, to work extra. So the only time I will be discouraged to work extra is if the marginal tax rate increases. That is the point they're making here. Do you understand now?
Yes.
And also for firms, like I said, this may increase. Okay, yeah. They said, however, cutting marginal tax rates possesses some setbacks. So we're talking about government trying to encourage the supply side of labor, right? By reducing marginal tax rate. But if government reduces marginal tax rate, what are the consequences of reducing the marginal tax rate? Number one, many workers are paid salaries and don't receive either overtime payment or bonuses. These workers cannot respond to changes in the marginal tax rate in the short run. Why won't they be able to respond to marginal tax rate in the short run? They have a fixed income. They are paid salaries, not wages. They don't receive bonuses. They don't receive overtime payments. So when you increase the marginal tax rate, when you reduce the marginal tax rate, it does not have any impact on them. So that means whatever policy government comes up with, it does not have any positive impact on other people. People that earn salaries, people that do not do overtime, people that do not get bonuses. So that means they are still going to be paying high rate of taxes. So that's the first setback. Do you get the point here? We start talking about reducing income tax. Income tax cannot be reduced, but marginal tax rate can be reduced. So that means when you work extra, you get more. That is what reduction in marginal tax rate is about. You work extra to get more. But this will not have any impact on workers that are fixed on salaries, on workers that do not do extra, that do not receive bonuses, on workers that do not do overtime. So what does marginal tax rate have to do with them? Nothing. So it does not have any impact on them. So that means they will still be discouraged to work. Get the first point there. The second, do you get it or not?
Yes.
The second one, cutting marginal tax rate on income may result into inequality of income because the gap between the low and the top income earners will widen. The high income earners, they don't have to work more extra hours before they get more. But low income earners, they have to work more extra hours to get more. So if a low income earner is working more extra hours, the high income earner is working more. The high income earners, their rate is always going to be higher than low income earners. So if they work extra, they get more than a low income earner working extra. So which simply means reduction in the marginal tax rate will still increase the gap between the rich and the poor. So those are the consequences about reducing marginal tax rate. If government reduces marginal tax rate, it encourages the supply side of labor. It encourages supply of labor, which means output is expected to rise. But the consequences are, one, it does not have any impact on workers that are fixed in salaries, on workers that do not do overtime, on workers that do not receive bonuses. So it's not going to have any impact on them. So that means they will still be discouraged. And the other one is that when you cut income tax, it results into inequality of income because high income earners will earn more, low income earners will earn less. And that widens the gap. I think the point about that is clear.
Yes.
That is taxes on income. Then we have taxes on profit. And when we talk about taxes on profit, we're talking about the corporation tax. So, yeah, there's something I said in the short run that those workers cannot respond to changes in marginal tax in the short run. Why? It is only in the long run they can start thinking about finding a new job that would allow them to benefit from the reduction in the marginal tax rate. Does it make sense to you? In the short run, the marginal tax rate is reduced. Government has reduced the marginal tax rate. But because I'm fixed on salaries, I cannot quickly change my job right now. But I can plan ahead to look out for a job that would allow me to have extra hours, bonuses over time. Well, that will be in the long run, not in the short run. I think all is clear about income tax.
Yes.
So the next one is taxes on profits. For taxes on profit, I wrote, Free market economists argue that high marginal tax rate on profit discourages firms from investing and from being successful, as tax taken from a company cannot be reinvested into the firm from the growth, firms for growth and survival. So taxes on profits. When taxes on profit are corporate tax. So if government increases marginal tax rates, firms will be discouraged to increase their output. They will not want to invest. Why? Because they are paying more. The amount of tax they pay cannot be reinvested into the business. So which means whatever they do, they cannot extend, they cannot expand, they cannot be successful because they are paying more taxes. So a high tax on companies' profits might also mean employees' wages are kept lower. So firms. Sorry, hold on, please.
Hello, monsieur.
Hi, good morning, sir.
How are you?
Good.
How's everything?
Alhamdulillah.
Gonna finish.
So for taxes on profit, it reduces firms' investment. They don't want to invest more. That's the first point. And the other one is that firms might decide to reduce wages of their workers. So, and that is not, yeah, and if wages of workers are reduced, what happens? They don't have that motivation to work harder. So that reduces productivity. And if productivity reduces, longer like the supply curve will not increase. Do you get the point here?
Yes, sir.
So taxes must be reduced. Income tax has to be reduced for employees to be motivated to increase productivity. Taxes on profit has to be reduced too. So if these two are reduced, then it is expected that the long run aggregate supply curve will shift to the right. I think it's clear. So that's the second way in which the free market supply side policy can be encouraged and increase, and it will lead to increase in the long run aggregate supply curve. So the third one on free market policy is changing the levels of welfare payments. Welfare benefits, if the welfare received by unemployed people is higher in relative to wages received by having a job, will reduce the incentives to work. So if individuals that are unemployed can receive more welfare benefits, the welfare benefit they receive in relative to working is higher, then they would not have any other reason to work. That's the point. If being unemployed, I can earn more than being employed, then there's no reason for me to work. Do you get the point I'm making here? Hence, welfare benefit can reduce aggregate supply because more workers remain unemployed. So I will choose not to work because I'm receiving a welfare benefit that is higher than me working in terms of wages. So one solution is to cut unemployment benefits to encourage workers to take a typically low-paid jobs. So for the supply side of the economy to increase through employment, it means government has to reduce or cut unemployment benefits. But cutting unemployment benefits has a consequence. It could lead to poverty. But that is the only way people would want to work, because they would want to even take jobs that are low paid. And taking jobs that are low paid increases the supply side of the economy. Do you get the point here? So, however, this may lead to poverty trap, like I said earlier on. So for poverty trap, poverty or earning trap occurs when a low-income working individual earns more by gaining a better paid employment, promotion, or working more hours, but the net gain is little or even negative. In some way, as income increases, welfare benefits are withdrawn. So we're cutting income tax, we're cutting welfare benefits so that people can start working. So there's a poverty trap or earning trap when, in the course of me getting a new job or being promoted, that I earn more, the benefits I used to receive start reducing. So it means there's no impact or little impact. Before now, I earn, but with unemployment benefits, I earn more. Now that I'm earning more based on the fact that I have more jobs or I do more hours or I'm being promoted, government starts reducing the unemployment government starts reducing the benefits I used to get. So it means that at the end of it all, whatever I earn now is not increasing. It's even going to negative because the withdrawals has been done on the benefit I receive that increases my income. That is what we call poverty trap. Do you get poverty trap here?
Yes.
You working, but it's giving you a net gain, a little net gain, or a negative. Then we have the unemployment trap. For unemployment, we know we're talking about cutting unemployment benefit. Cutting unemployment benefit will bring about a poverty trap. Poverty trap could be earning trap or unemployment trap. For unemployment trap, I wrote, it occurs when an individual is little better off or is even worse off getting a job than staying unemployed because of loss of benefit and taxation. I could be in unemployment trap if I start working and taxes I pay rises to the extent that I could not save anymore. Or the welfare benefit I get starts being cut off. So that is unemployment trap. So it is unemployment trap because it started happening as soon as I get employed. So these are reasons why people might not want to work. So what is the solution to this? The solution is one, reduce taxes on income and rate of welfare benefit withdrawal as income increases. This is more expensive for one, lower welfare benefit, but this will lead to poverty. To encourage people to work, you lower the benefit, welfare benefit. But lowering welfare benefit means less income for people. And less income will bring about poverty. It will lead to recession and at the end of it, lead to poverty. Or reduce taxes on income and rate of welfare benefit withdrawal as income increases. Or you do it steadily. As soon as people start earning more, you start reducing their taxes. You start increasing their taxes or withdrawing the benefit they used to get. But if this happens, it affects taxpayers because they have to pay more taxes, and government have to think about other ways to encourage people. So it is expensive to do that. So either ways, it is expensive to lower taxes. It is expensive to reduce benefits. Reducing benefits will bring about poverty. And if the economy is going into poverty, it affects the economic performance of the country. It's also expensive to reduce taxes because if you reduce taxes, it reduces government expenditure, or it reduces government revenue. So that is the problem about cutting taxes or using cutting taxes on unemployment or finding a way to reduce poverty trap. So poverty trap is difficult to reduce because it reduces government revenue and it discourages people to work. I think the point is clear. So the fourth one is cutting the cost of bureaucracy for firms. When we talk about bureaucracy, we're talking about administration in government. So here I wrote, the free market economists argue that the state should be as small as possible, as rules and regulations are too tight that they increase firms' cost, leading to higher prices for consumers and lower output. Bureaucracy, the red tape, a lot of administrative law. You have to be there, you have to be here, you have to go to the ministry of this, you have to go to the ministry of that. The government enterprises, the government parastatals are too large that because they are too large, it increases the cost for firms. So it means they have to visit virtually every ministry before they could get, approval for setting up. And this increases their cost of production. That's why they said the free market economists argue that the government sector should be as small as possible because if it is so small, it reduces the time, it reduces the cost for firms. And that is the only way firms would be encouraged to start setting up in the market. And that would increase output and lower prices. But if bureaucracy continues to rise, or if bureaucracy continues to be so tight for firms, it will be discouraging them. It will discourage them from setting up. And as a result of that, they might not want to. And if new firms are not setting up into a country or into a market, it means output in that market is expected to fall and prices are expected to rise. Is it clear? They may also provide a disincentive for entrepreneurs to set up. If there's more into bureaucracy, entrepreneurs will be discouraged. They won't want to set up in that country or in such country. Do you get it? However, critics would argue that regulation sometimes protects citizens, such as procedures to improve health and safety in product design. Yes, government needs a lot of workers to check and balance to ensure that there's compliance. So if the public sector is too small, it means they might not be able to check and balance situations. Workers might be exploited. Firms will not think about health and safety guidelines. But if there's government agents, government individuals, government representatives that check the deals, the procedures, the operations of firms. That would make them to be up and doing. So that is the criticism about cutting the cost of bureaucracy. So they are saying bureaucracy should not be cut, because if it is cut, it reduces the eyes of government on compliances. I think the point about cutting the cost of bureaucracy for firms is clear.
Yes, sir.
Good. So that takes us to the fifth one, which is the regulation of labor market. When we talk about labor market, we're talking about where the demand and supply of labor intersects. So this applies to the process of removing government controls from labor markets. This means removing any regulations that brings about labor flexibility, that hinders labor flexibility, such as reducing trade union power, removing minimum wages. So in the labor market, there's a powerhouse in the labor market, which is the trade union. The trade union is so powerful, it brings about inflexibility in the labor market. So the regulation will reduce the inflexibility in the labor market. The regulation will bring about flexibility into the labor market. That is the point. How would the regulation bring flexibility into the labor market? By reducing the power of the trade union, and also by reducing or removing minimum wage laws. Reducing the power of trade union means the bargaining power of trade union, the power they have in terms of negotiation would reduce. So that gives employers the edge over their employees. And the second one is removing minimum wage laws. Removing minimum wage laws means firms will be able to decide on whatever they want to pay to workers. They can hire and fire. Do you get the point here? So for free market economists believe that the effect of making labor markets more flexible would be either to increase the labor supply or increase labor productivity, and the long run aggregate supply curve is expected to shift to the right. The regulation increases flexibility in the labor market, and if labor market becomes flexible, it means you can earn more. You don't have to. With the trade union, this is the point. With the trade union, they try to put us into one market. They be the one to sell us to whoever they want to sell us to at whatever price. We won't be able to negotiate prices on terms of what we get. But if there's flexibility, each individual, based on their negotiating power, might earn more than another. But if the trade union negotiates for everybody, it means everybody in the same cadre would earn the same thing. I might be at the same level as you, but I might have more certificates than you. I might have more experience than you. So I won't be able to negotiate because the trade union negotiates for us. But with flexibility in the labor market, employers will choose who they want to pay higher wages to, who they don't want to pay higher wages to. That is the point. So that could increase the supply of labor, and can also increase labor productivity. And if supply of labor is increasing, labor productivity is increasing, the long run aggregate supply curve will increase. Do you understand?
Yes.
So that takes us to labor market flexibility itself. Okay, other place. That takes us to labor market flexibility. When we talk about labor market flexibility, is the degree to which demand and supply in labor market respond to external changes and return it to a new market equilibrium. So there's going to be changes in the labor market. So the ability to respond to those changes with both demand for and supply of labor coming to a new equilibrium, that is labor market flexibility. Get the point here. The market is at equilibrium. There's flexibility if the market is able to respond to different changes that might have occurred and put it back into a new equilibrium. That is what labor market flexibility is. So we start with the first one, which is geographical flexibility. For geographical flexibility, the willingness of workers to move area to get a job. So there's geographical flexibility if workers are willing to move from one environment or from one location to another to seek for employment, based on the fact that probably there's opportunity abroad, there's opportunity elsewhere that exceeds or that is more beneficial. There are benefits that are more, that are positive in certain area than where you are. So that might make you to want to switch. That is geographical flexibility. Do you understand geographical flexibility here? The ability for worker to move from one location to another. 2, then we have the external. Thank you. We have the external numerical flexibility. For external numerical flexibility, I wrote, this refers to the ability of firms to adjust their workforce according to their needs. For For example, hiring workers for temporary basis or replacing workers with capital equipment. So we call it external flexibility. If employers are able to adjust their workforce based on their own needs. So, we need more workers right now, but we need them for just a short period of time. Let's employ temporary workers, or we replace workers that we think there are surplus requirements with equipment. That is external numerical flexibility. You are increasing the numbers of workers, but you are making that adjustment based on your demand, based on the demand within your organization. So it's just about your operations. You are adjusting the numbers of workers you have based on the demand in your company. That is external numerical flexibility. Then we have the internal. For internal numerical flexibility, we're talking about adjusting the time because it's internal, it's within the organization. So here I wrote, this refers to the ability of firms to adjust the working hours of staff to suit their needs. So we are adjusting the working hours of our workers to suit the needs of the company. For example, giving them 0 hours. 0 hours contract means we are not obliged to give you a job, but whenever there's a job, you'll be called. Okay. For internal numerical flexibility, firms would adjust their time they will adjust the time of their workers to suit their own demand. So to do this, they might give workers 0 hours contracts. 0 hour contract means we are not obliged to give you a job when we don't have one. So we only call you when the need arises. That is what we call internal numerical flexibility. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Then the third one, functional flexibility. This occurs when the firm can move a worker from one job to another. This requires workers to be multi-skilled. And how can workers be multi-skilled? You have to train them. So for functional flexibility, it really lies in the hands of the employers. They have to train their workers. Though training workers is expensive anyway, but it is expected that as soon as those workers are trained, their output will cover up for the costs of the firms. Does it make sense to you that way?
Yes.
Okay. So that's why I wrote, this requires workers to be multi-skilled. This often requires firms to train their workers. The cost of training is to be offset against the performance of the workers from the flexible working of the part of the worker. So whatever the workers will do, in as much as we have trained you, your output should cover the cost we have spent on you. I think the point is clear. The next one is wage flexibility. For wage flexibility, this occurs when firms are able to adjust wages up and down according to the forces of demand supply in the labor market. So the ability of firms to be able to adjust wages to increase or reduce wages based on the demand for and the supply of labor in the market. Or if demand for labor is increasing, they increase the wages. If the supply of labor is increasing in the market, they reduce the wages. That is what wage flexibility is about. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
The next one is minimum wages. Free market economists argue that minimum wages create unemployment. Why? Because if there's minimum wage, firms are obliged to pay. And this discourages them from employing more workers because it increases their cost on wages and it reduces their profit. Do you understand? That is why it creates unemployment. So the higher the wage rate, the less the demand there will be for workers from employers. This will therefore reduce the supply side of the economy. If firms are not employing more workers, it means output is expected to fall within the economy. That is the point. However, other economists argue that higher minimum wage rates can lead to improvement in the supply side of the economy, as firms will be encouraged to train their low-income workers to justify their rise in payments. So, some economists believe that with minimum wage, firms are paying more now to workers, yes or no? So those low-income earners start earning more than what they used to earn. That is what it means. So this might encourage firms to train them to justify that payment that they are paying them so that they become more functional. And if they become more functional, it increases productivity. So that's the other side of minimum wage. Minimum wage is expected to reduce the supply side of the economy because unemployment is going to rise. On the other hand, with minimum wage, firms might be motivated to train their workers to justify that payment. Oh, you earn 700 now. Before you used to earn 300. So Earning 700 means you have to be able to work. You have to be able to work for 700. So you don't have the skills, you don't have the ability. We have to train you to justify that pay. And that might increase productivity and the supply side of the economy. Is it clear? Then we have the trade unions. Are you there?
Mhm.
For the trade unions, I said the purpose of the trade union is to organize workers into one bargaining unit. And that becomes monopoly. So the trade union takes charge of all workers. And that brings about inflexibility. So here I wrote, the trade union then become a monopolist, the only seller of labor, and prevents workers from competing among themselves in the labor market. Like I said earlier, if trade union is so powerful, it means they negotiate for me, they negotiate for you. So it is what they are able to negotiate we get. Maybe I have the ability to negotiate better than even the trade union, but I won't be able to explore because the trade union negotiates for me. So that means I cannot compete with you, you cannot compete with me. So economic theory predicts that the power of trade union will lead to lower output. Therefore, the power of trade union must be reduced to bring flexibility into the labor market. So it's just about labor market flexibility, adjusting, being able to adapt or adjust the demand for and supply of labor to a new equilibrium level. That is what labor flexibility is about. However, some critics argue that reducing the power of trade union exposes some group of workers to exploitation. Some workers, they are, especially the minority, those that are low income earners, they might not have that capacity to negotiate. So they become worse off here. Without trade union power, they might be exploited by employers. Do you understand? And the last one here is other changes to legal employment laws. Another way to increase the labor supply or to increase the supply side of the economy through the free market is to change laws about employment. So reducing laws that bring about lack of flexibility in the labor market, such as making it easier to hire and fire workers, will encourage firms to increase the numbers of their workforce and improve the supply side of the economy. Another issue is migration policy. Countries must decide on who and how many migrants are allowed into the economy. A country may decide to allow immigrants with specific skills that are lacking in the economy access the country to boost the supply side. So labor laws here, what they're talking about, legal employment laws. The first one is finding a way to increase the power of employers, by allowing them to be able to hire and fire at any point in time. If they have the ability to hire and fire at any point in time without any legal litigation on them, it encourages them to employ more workers. And they know that if they employ them and they feel that they are not up to standard, they can sack them. So that encourages them to employ more, and that would increase the supply side of the economy. That's the first one. And the other one is about migration policy. Countries should start thinking about employing immigrants that their economy is lacking in terms of skills, and that would improve the supply side of their economy. Oh, we lack teachers. Oh, let's employ teachers. We have doctors. We don't have to employ doctors. We don't need doctors as immigrants. So that can also increase the supply side of the economy. So all we've talked about are how to improve the economic performance of the economy through the free market policy.
Yeah.
Any question about that?
No.
So that takes us to interventionists.